and I'm very happy to be here with the very first VKO Extra. I am the VKO champ, the Reverend of Combat, and overall a good guy to know, Joe. And I'm just joined by Justin. Justin, what's going on?
What's going on, man? Let's get it done. I'm so excited and pumped for VKO Extra, bro.
Yeah, for those of you who are listening to us and we're like, what the fuck is a VKO Extra? Because you're on YouTube and you know nothing about us. We do a podcast called The Verbal Knockout, which is available pretty much everywhere you get your podcast from, where we talk boxing and MMA like we do now. VKO Extra is kind of going to be a complimentary thing that we do from time to time on YouTube, where we're going to talk about something maybe we didn't get to talk about on the podcast. Like today, we're going to talk about PFL 5, which took place last Thursday. But we'll talk boxing, we'll talk other things. We really want to engage, so, like and subscribe, and of course, leave us your comments. But let's get underway. We're just going to do the main card because I don't want to do the prelim. But before we even get to the main card, for those of you who are listening to the podcast, me and Justin have really been enjoying covering PFL lately. We like the format. We like the whole thing of playoffs. We like getting to know different fighters. And right now we're kind of coming to the end of the quote-unquote regular season in a lot of these divisions. And Justin, what have your thoughts been so far on PFL?
Oh, man, I love it. Don't get me wrong. Like I'm going to say right now, this last PFL, the fights that happened last week, Thursday, it was a heartbreaker for me because one of my favorite UFC fighters, or ex-UFC fighters, and fighters in general, that was on that card. You put his gloves down, and it was such a emotional fight to watch, and it was such a great card to just all the fights that was on that card were just amazing. But to see him retire was such a heartbreaker for me because he went out, I think, on top in such a great way. It sucked because he didn't get in, but it was a good fight. PFL.
Well, we can talk about that. That was actually a prelim fight. What Justin's talking about is Filthy Tom Lawlor, who took on Jordan Young in the light heavyweight division. And like he said, because the season format for the PFL is a points format. And Tom Lawlor lost his first fight. He had no points. So going into this, he really needed a first round finish to really have a chance at a playoff, which he didn't get. And Tom Lawlor is a guy that I've told Justin on the side, I have a special affection for Tom Lawlor as a wrestling fan because Tom Lawlor is a pro wrestler. Right now, he's currently the New Japan Strong Openweight champion. And I know in the past he's held the MLW title. I know even before UFC, he had a WWE tryout. So, he's a guy who's always kind of near and dear to me as a wrestling fan with his entrances and everything. And I was happy for Tom Lawlor going into that fight with Jordan Young in the sense of he got to win because he hasn't won in 6 years. I mean, he missed time with the bullshit Austin Reigns suspension. He had that abysmal fucking Golden Boy MMA fight where he was coming off of that and he just wasn't the same. And he really isn't the same anymore. So, he's 38 years old. He's doing his pro wrestling. I know he hosts a show on Figure 4 Wrestling with Brian Alvarez that I listen to from time to time and I enjoy it. So, I mean, he's not going to be hurting for anything. So I was happy that, he at least got to go out with a win. He looked good with his wrestling. I wouldn't say he looked great, but, he looked better than Jordan Young.
Oh, absolutely. He outstriked the man. He got 3 out of 4 takedowns. He fucking was literally on top of Young for majority of the fight. Granted, I would have loved to see him knock him out. And at points, it looked like he had a chance because he was clearly outstriking Young to I think it was 3-1 or 4-1 ratio because Young only threw I think it was maybe close to 30 punches or some shit like that, and he only landed I think 17 to 18 of those strikes, while as fucking Lawler threw for like damn near 90 and hit for like 70. Like he out punched this man all night. And it was so good to see him in my opinion, good spirits. Cause like from round 1 to round 3, even though he started to like, you know, look like he was slowing down a little bit, like he looked tired, he still looked good in spirit. Like he looked like he still wanted to get in there and mix it up. I was so happy. And to see him put his gloves down and like to know that he was in good moral, like he was in good morale, like he was happy with what happened and he didn't take anything away from it. I was happy to see it like end the way it did.
Yeah, no, I'm happy for the guy. I know the guy. He had a baby a couple of years ago. I think he's either just got married or he's about to get married.
Yeah.
You know, so he's got things going on for himself. Like I said, he's doing his wrestling thing. You know, he's never going to be in WWE, but you know, he's making his name though, right? He's making his name. You know, so you know, I'm glad he's doing his podcast with Brian Alvarez and he's doing his wrestling, and he doesn't need to be doing this anymore because he's kind of peaked. So I was glad he just went out and to win. He's not going to get into the playoff, but I think he knew going in he wasn't going to get into the playoff. Yeah, but at least he got to go out with a W because he was a good contender when he was in UFC.
Oh, absolutely.
But let's talk the main card. First fight on that main card was in the light heavyweight division. It was Cesar Ferreira versus Chris Camozzi. Now, Ferreira was like the first tough Brazil winner, and he was actually in UFC as a middleweight. So can you imagine like this guy cutting down a middleweight? You know, so now he's in the light heavyweight. He's much more comfortable there. And Camozzi's been a fucking UFC veteran from like way back when like Chuck Liddell was fighting like Tito Ortiz. Like I think he was on that season of Tough. So I mean, these two guys, they fucking been around. Ferreira, you know, Ferreira's fucking, he's been doing his thing so far in PFL, but Camozzi just was better. He was just better. I thought Ferreira looked really good round 1. He kind of won it easy, but then Camozzi kind of came up with his second wind and kind of never looked back the rest of the fight.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He took charge for the rest of the round 2 and 3.
You know, but you know he won the fight, but you know because of the fucking points format, right?
He only got like 3, right?
He got the 3. It was the only. Actually, no. He's 1-1, so he lost his first fight, so it wasn't enough to get him in. Ferreira would have been like the top seed if he would have won this fight, but he lost it. So, but he's still in the playoffs, so he's still in the hunt for the million. But that was the opener. You got anything else you want to say about this fight before we move on?
It was a great fight. You mentioned it. Camozzi was just better for the rest of the night. Like I think he was slow to start, and I think he was initially coming into that a little bit. He got a little shell shocked in that first round by Ferreira, where he was like, "Oh fuck!" Like he got hit a couple times. He got put on his back wheel, but then I don't know what happened in the corner. Camozzi came out the corner and he just outlanded him round 2, round 3. And then he fucking continued to just mollywop him. And he got the knockdown. So it's like, he did great. I wish he would have finished it. But even with him finishing it, it sucked because I'm pretty sure Camozzi knew, since he had no points, he was not getting into the finals. So I love the point system. Like, just to touch back on it, like it forces fighters to either get the finish or the submission ASAP and make it more interesting to watch the fights, man. Like at least that's how I feel.
I like it too, but I also think like for people who jump on and they see a guy lose, but yet he's in the playoffs, so the guy who won has to go home.
Yeah,
it's kind of confusing. Like I can understand how that might work in legitimate sports, where it's like, well, the guy lost the last game of the season, but you know, it's time for the playoffs. It's fighting, and fighting is a little bit different. So I can understand where that may be frustrating for viewers at home. Like this show didn't really have strong viewership at ESPN. Like I think this show did like 65,000 viewers, which is like really bad. So But I mean, it is what it is. I've been following it, so I kind of get it. And I think the commentators should do a better job of kind of giving the drama of like, hey, this guy now has got to go into the playoffs on an L. Like, he has no momentum, you know? And, hey, this guy who lost, well, hey, we hope we get him back there next season because now he might fucking get in. It's weird, but, you know, they've been doing this. It's like the third fucking year that they've done this format because last year was the COVID year. So I feel like they're still trying to
figure it out.
Yeah, like figure it out, not just in terms of the playoff itself, but just in like how do you relay it and make it exciting to viewers. But let's move on. In the light heavyweight division, we still had we had more fights. We got Emiliano SORDI versus Dan SPOHN. SORDI just needed to get points. They kind of came out early and they bumped heads, and SORDI was kind of out of it for like a good round and a half. You know, like it just. I don't know if he was just stunned or what, but he was kind of out of it. I know round 2 came and they were really trading, and I kind of gave it to SORDI, but it could have went either way. Yeah. And round 3 was like the hardest round for me to score. But overall, it wound up being a draw, so SORDI got in and SPOHN went home. What were your thoughts on the fight, the draw, and just the whole thing in general as far as it relates to playoff?
That's the one. I'm not gonna lie, that one fight actually got me like fucked up because I was so confused at first the way it ended up being called a draw. 1, 2, I felt like, I don't know, maybe that's because I'm being more tough on SORDI than I should be, but I felt like at one point I think he was just selling it way too much with him being hurt. I felt like he should have just continued on moving forward, get on his back horse, and try to control the second round and get the guy out of there. It didn't happen, but mind you, their out rate for like strikes were up there. Like they were both putting out, I think, close to like combined 100 punches a round. They were doing very well, but it like this is the one thing I don't like about the point system with PFL, the draw. Like it sucks because the guy who, like, I don't think either opponent gets awarded points.
I think they both get 1 point for a draw.
Oh, they get 1 point? Yeah. Oh, okay, so like the 1 point for a draw, it's like I feel like there should be no. It sucks. I feel like there should be no draws. It's either winner or loser. Something needs to happen, and shit like that needs to be like handled better. I don't know. Like this match for me and the other one later in the card threw me off 100%. Like I wasn't feeling it like at all.
I mean, the only other thing that I want to say about this fight that really bothered me early on was I thought round 1, like SORDI won round 1, right? Like he got bonked, but he won round 1.
Yeah.
But there was a point where like he had top position and he must have hit SPOHN with like a million fucking strikes to the back of the head. And at one point, SPOHN fucking tells the referee like he's hitting me in the back of the head. And there was like nothing. And I think it kind of affected SPOHN the rest of the fight because, you know, you get hit in the back of the head like that. Those are hard shots, too.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, it affected the rest of the fight. And considering that SPOHN needed a second round finish to get into the playoffs, I'm wondering how much that factored in. And I would have liked the ref to do a better job there.
Yeah, I agree.
But now we get to go to the welterweight division. We had the defending welterweight PFL champ, Ray Cooper III, who missed weight. So he lost the point for the missing weight. He couldn't get any points for this fight. But he needed to win this fight because his opponent, NIKOLAI fuck his name. NIKOLAI ALEKSAKHIN. Yeah, I'm not even going to try anymore. I'm doing a horrible job. Someone will correct me on YouTube. But if that guy got points, if he got a stoppage, he's in automatically.
Yeah.
So Cooper's trying to really protect the spot. He's trying to zero this guy out, but he can't get anything himself. That being said, Cooper, even though, you know, you got to think he had a bad camp, right? He missed weight. That's not something he generally does. He was able to kind of grind it out. Like his wrestling wasn't working for him the way it normally did. Although in round 3, I think he got some takedowns, but he grinded it out. He got the win. He basically eliminated his opponent from the playoffs. And, you know, hopefully he gets over his weight issues going into, you know, next round. Because I think next round he's going to have some killers going forward. But what did you think of Ray Cooper? Because Ray Cooper's my favorite to win this tournament, by the way.
It was actually it was pretty good, dude. I completely agree. He secured the defense against this cat. He did. What's his name? I'm not gonna go into it because he has a weird name. He did make it real tough for Cooper during the fight. I felt like it was one of those moments where, shit, is he really gonna win? Like, is Aleksin gonna just dominate this dude going forward? But it didn't turn out this way. Cooper actually stopped him from taking out like a lot of the stand-up game by taking him to the fucking ground. I think that was round 2 and 3 where he was able to control most of it on the ground, utilizing his wrestling. So he was able to hold it. I think his wrestling, and mind you, I don't have a huge wrestling background, but I watch it enough and I analyze it enough to know like who might need to do a little improvement, whatever the case is. Since he's moving forward in the playoffs, like, I hate to say it, all the bottom feeders are now weeded out. You're going to be running into some monsters, and his wrestling, I think, needs to be better. Like, he really needs a better training camp moving forward, focusing on his wrestling and his stand-up, because I think, like, he looked a little nervous to do the stand-up between him and NIKOLAI. I looked like he was a little nervous going into the stand-up.
I think he was just not in the best of shape, you know, with the bad training camp, because his wrestling is normally a lot better. And his stand up, it's like a Gagey, you know, where he's kind of an in your face fighter.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not a polished stand up. Like, he's more dirty boxing and just power. Okay. Like the guy's probably the strongest guy left. You know, so I'm not worried about that. It's just more like, hey, I hope this weight miss was a one-time thing. He'll have a better camp, because, you know, we'll talk about who he's got going in the playoff. But I mean, that's going to determine the winner of this whole tournament. Is his next fight, right?
Yeah.
But let's talk about the main event of this show, which was Rory MacDonald versus Gleison Tibau. Now, both these guys got UFC backgrounds. Tibau is really not a fucking welterweight, but whatever, right? Like, he's moving up, he's getting paid, whatever. This is probably the biggest fucking win of his career, and he didn't earn it. I don't know what the fucking judges were watching when they scored this the way they scored it. I gave Rory all 3 rounds. Rory wasn't spectacular, but he did just enough to win. One of my problems with Rory, and this is kind of always my problem with Rory, is he coasts.
Yeah.
You know, he coasts. And it's like, Rory's so talented. You gotta remember, like, when Rory first came on the scene, Rory was like the guy that they were saying was going to be like the next GSP. You know, he came from that camp. He had the same trainers. He was training with GSP. It was like, this is going to be the heir apparent. And then it just didn't happen. And he's in the PFL, and he's still really good, but he coasted, right? And he kind of coasted a bit with Gleison Tibau, and I think it might have hurt him in the eyes of the judges. But that being said, I still thought he won the fucking fight.
I agree, and that's I'm on the same page with you. I thought, and this is what goes to show you, like, how sometimes fights are scored where it's fucked up. Like, I don't know how, because even their official stats show otherwise. How someone who outlands their opponent, who takes down their opponent, gets more of that throughout the entire fight, and you still score
2 rounds
for Tibau. Like, I think round 1, fucking Rory scored 50 strikes, while Tibau did like only 30. The second round, Roy picked it up. He had like 75 strikes or 70 strikes, I think it was. And Tibau still only did 30. Yet, you gave both rounds to Tibau?
Yeah, I what just the fuck? I just thought Tibau wasn't doing enough to win those rounds, and here's the problem with the PFL, right? Like, Rory wins this fight, he's the top seed.
Yeah, he would have been number 1.
And he would have been fighting Magomed Karimov, right? Next round. Because now he's not the top seed, he's going to fight Ray Cooper. And that's a fight that he can lose. Like, whoever wins that fight is gonna win this whole welterweight title in PFL for this season. Like, that was the fight that they were really trying to make the final, and now it's gonna open the playoffs.
Which
and
ridiculous.
Ray Cooper is a guy that could beat Rory MacDonald. He's got a style that is gonna make Rory uncomfortable. So it's like, now Rory's going in on a loss against a guy who is gonna make him uncomfortable. But bear in mind, that guy, while he's got momentum on a win, he's also missed weight, and he's also facing the biggest opponent of his career in Rory MacDonald. So it's like, that's going to be an interesting dynamic for the playoffs, which I think start in August for the welterweights. You know, so quick turnaround too. But what were your thoughts on the PFL before I give you the standings for the light heavyweights and the welterweights going for the playoffs?
I love PFL 5. I enjoyed it from the start to finish. There was a couple fights under there that we didn't speak about. that I loved, that I was actually shocked at who lost. And PFL, they're doing it right. They're doing it great. I would like to see a change in their point system, in the sense of, I don't know, how would you feel about this? I thought it would be kind of cool where if you beat your opponent, you take their points. That would have been an awesome aspect to the PFL tournament. Because think about it, like, for example, a guy like Lawler, he won. His opponent had, I think, 3 points. He could have had his points and he could have probably made it into the playoffs. Like, situations like that where you beat your opponent has more points than you. I feel like you should be able to, like, snatch those points up. And if you're able to seed in the tournament, you can seed in the tournament. Because you brought it out. Like, if a person loses, they had a lot of points. The other guy that won, he might have more points than his opponent, but even though he still lost, he still has more points than his opponent. So now he still moves forward over the fact that he had points from his first round. I feel like maybe they should do something to that degree.
I'm not totally opposed to that idea, although I would tweak it further, because I wouldn't necessarily say like a Tom Lawler should have took points because he went to a decision. But I would say like, hey, if you get stopped, you lose a point. Like, yeah, that guy gets his bonus depending on what round he stopped you, but you lose a point because you were stopped. And this way it's not, oh, you just get 0 points. It's like, no, you get -1, you know, for losing. I would like to see more of a tweak, because, I mean, there's a lot of guys who fought, not just, you know, for these divisions, but in other divisions who, because they came on late or whatever, they only got 1 fight and they had no chance to get into a playoff unless their division was like really sloppy in points and they had a spectacular first round finish. I would like to see a way where like those guys are not so penalized on the tiebreaker.
Yeah.
You know, because they had 1 fight. Like, I think Chris CAMOZZI was a guy who basically couldn't get in because he only had 1 fight. And it's like, well, or not CAMOZZI. It was someone who in that division who only had 1 fight. I think it was Ferreira, I think, who only had it was
I thought it was that other fight where they had the two.
No, it was Antonio Carlos Jr. He had 1 fight. He actually
that's what it was. Yeah, the draw.
But there's been other fights where the guys don't get in, and it's like, and they only had 1 fight, and it's like, it's not really fair to them that they came out late. There's got to be a better way to do it. I don't know what it is. I mean, we're tweaking something that they're figuring out still. So, and I'm not sure our way will be much better, because I mean, if we did it that way, maybe guys would fight more tentatively and just not to get stopped either, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm not saying it's bad. I like it.
No, it's definitely good. I think there just needs to be more of an explanation to the audience. I think ESPN should actually do more hype shows, like showing standings and that. I don't know if they talk about this on SportsCenter at all, because I think that would be a help too, right? Is if they advertise it on SportsCenter, like, hey, PFLs this week, these are the standings.
I haven't seen anything, to be honest, on SportsCenter, but yeah, I agree with you. They need to push them up more. Like, it's they're on their website. It's on ESPN Plus.
Yeah, but I don't even think on the ESPN Plus site it shows the standings. You know, like, I think the only time you're hearing about the standings is when you turn on the card. And most people who turn on the MMA card, they don't know what the fuck a standing is or whatever. They're just turning it on to see fights. I mean, if you really want to hook them in, you got to hook them in with the format. And I think that, you know, I watch baseball, right? Like, I casually watch baseball. I'm not a hardcore baseball fan. But I'll randomly ask my phone, hey, man, tell me what the Mets are doing, right? Like, right now, the Mets are a first-place team. I know how many games they are ahead. I know who they're playing today. I know who's behind them, right? I don't got to wait till I watch the game. You know, I mean, once I'm watching the game, I'm watching the game. I'm probably still not going to watch tomorrow because there's so many games in the season, right? But I'm able to keep track of the season. In PFL, you really can't keep track of the season unless you're watching the telecast. And it's a bad way to get people engaged.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I'm hoping they'll be able to fix that. But
so let's talk the standings. So the light heavyweight, this is the light heavyweight playoffs right now. It's going to be Antonio Carlos Jr. versus Emiliano Sordi in the first round of the playoff. And on the other bracket, it's going to be Cesar Ferreira versus your boy Martin Hamlet. All of these are going to be really good fights, right? Like Hamlet would have been one of my favorites early on, but he suffered a bad loss in the prelims. I like SORDI, but I didn't like what I saw from him this week, so I don't really know how to call that playoff. But it's going to be a good one. On the welterweight side, we got Joao Zeferino versus Magomed Karimov in the first bracket, right? Second bracket, of course, we got Rory and Ray Cooper. Again, I feel like whoever wins that Rory-Ray Cooper fight, they're going to go on ahead. I know this week we got lightweights, and I believe we have the lightweights for the men and the women this week. So we'll talk about that on the podcast next week, God willing. So that's it. Again, like, subscribe, and comment below. And be sure to listen to the Verbal Knockout podcast. Follow us on Twitter at VKO Pod. We're also on Instagram at VKO Pod. And for those of you who are really shy about the comments, you could always email us. verbalknockout1.0 at gmail.com. I'm Joe. That's Justin. We're out.